right, let's just dive in. So that's me. I am an Australian. I have been living in Vancouver, Canada for nearly 3 years now. I love cooking. Um, that's about, you probably heard my Australian voice kicking about in the Knowledge Centre, or maybe you've seen me send out our customer newsletter once a month, and among other things. But if you subscribe to Keela's public newsletter, and that's the one that's sent every Friday from David, you'll know that we host these non-profit, general industry-wide kind of webinars called Key Labs. And they're for everybody. They're not just for Keela users. They're just general best practice in the practices that help out the nonprofit industry. But we wanted to create a space that did a similar thing, but within the context of Keela for all of our Keela users. So that's what Care Labs is. We're really big on branding at Keela. So we've got Key Labs for everyone, and then Care Labs are just for our Keela users. And that's what we're talking through today. So keep an eye out for my newsletter on the first Thursday of every month, where I announce kind of the webinar that we're going to be doing in the upcoming weeks. I do a little announcement in your Keela account that you might see pop out as well. Today, we are looking at how you can use Keela's inbuilt metrics to measure the many successes of your organization. So I'll be covering what KPIs are, key performance indicators, what they are, just to get everyone on the same page. But the main focus of today's session is going to be how to view and understand the KPIs tool in Keela, because that's what Care Labs are all about, right? They're a deep dive into the Keela system. After the webinar, I'll be sure to send through a bunch of resources that I chat about today, including a webinar that was held by my boss, Tassie, that dives into non-profit KPIs in much greater detail. So if you're super keen on KPIs at the end of this and you think, I want more, I'll send you through a really good resource on it as well so you can take a deeper dive. Let's get started though, enough of that. What are KPIs? What a wonderful question. So this little acronym, KPI, stands for something really big. Key Performance Indicator, or Key Performance Indicators, because most of the time there's more than one that you're talking about. So Key Performance Indicators is a bit of a mouthful. So for the duration of this webinar, I'm going to be referring to them as KPIs, but just remember Key Performance Indicators. They're kind of like a report card for your organization. They are the figures and numbers, percentages, and calculations that you can use to measure some part of your organization over a specific period of time. So they're traditionally used to indicate effectiveness, the effectiveness of your organization when compared to what your mission goals are. Here's my target. Am I reaching my target? You can use them to celebrate successes. So yay, we did reach our target, but also identify areas that you might need to work on. So, okay, we were a little bit short. What can we do to sort that out? I have been using KPIs for 10 years. No matter what I was doing, no matter what country I was doing it in, I have had KPIs at every single job. There's been some form of target or goal that I've needed to hit in order to do that job well. When I was working in retail, when I was but a young girl, starry-eyed, moving to the big city in Melbourne in Australia, I got a job at a retail store for selling really terrible quality clothes. And we had KPIs there. One of the KPIs that we had was we needed to sell 2.1 items of clothing per customer per day, kind of on average. So it kind of averaged out. If you sold one item of clothing to a customer here and then 3 items next, it would kind of average out. The purpose of the KPI in that situation was the more clothes our employees sell, the more money we're going to make. So it was sort of feeding the big corporation wheel. But the thing was, I was a really young kid. It was my first job sort of outside of university. And I had no idea how to sell clothes. I didn't want to. They were pretty crummy clothes, and I didn't want to try and have that awkward conversation where I try and make people buy stuff. And I hated it when it happened to me. I hated people who were always like, "Do you want to buy this add-on kind of thing? Do you know, buy a tote bag or something like that?" But even if I did enjoy it and I did want to be successful at it, we didn't actually know what our items per customer, what that KPI was until the end of the day. So I would clock off my shift and my manager would say, Elsie, you only sold 1.7 items per customers today. You didn't hit your target. And I would just feel dejected and pretty crap, and I'd leave and hate, like, not look forward to coming back the next day. So that's a really good example of how not to use KPIs. There was no point in reviewing them at the end of the day. I should have been looking at it throughout the day so that I could adjust my strategy if I had have wanted. I definitely didn't, but good example. So my perception of KPIs and how important they are definitely changed as I got older, and I got a lot more serious about the work that I was doing, and I found a lot more enjoyment in it. But they completely transformed when Tassie, my boss, came to work at Keela. She taught me pretty much everything that I know about KPIs, and she's a real driver for them. And some of you might have been lucky enough to view her webinar. It's called a crash course in KPIs for nonprofits, the one that I mentioned before, and already benefited from her wisdom. But no worries, I'll send it in after today. But I'm going to summarize a lot of it in today's webinar anyway. But the most important thing that Tassie taught me was the difference between a lagging KPI and a leading KPI. What the heck is that? I hear you saying. I said the same thing, dear viewers. And this is what Tassie said. She said, okay, Elsie, lagging indicators are any metrics or targets or KPIs, any goals that you set that tell you what happened after the fact. So when you get to the end of the day and your manager says, you didn't sell enough clothes, Elsie, that's a lagging indicator because it happens at the end of the day once I've finished, once the race is finished. It's a target that you review at the end of the day, at the end of the week, month, or year that tells you what you achieved within that specific time period. So it's the final result. Did you hit your target, yes or no? They should measure your overall organizational goals. So everyone should sort of be responsible for these targets, these lagging indicators, lagging KPIs. Some really popular examples that I've seen in the nonprofit sector are the total funds raised, total programs run, total folks helped, those kind of things where you look back and you say, this is the impact we had this year. They measure the actual results of your hard work. Whereas on the other end, there are the leading indicators, and they predict the results at year end. These are measuring all of the work that you put in that will result in the final product, that will result in the lagging indicator. So they measure the activities that you do each week, each day, each month, and they help you achieve your lagging indicators. They're kind of what's going to get you the overarching results. So they will suggest to you, if reviewed regularly, you'll be able to tell by looking at these leading indicators if you're going to be able to reach your lagging indicator goals. Let's do an example. It's going to be a little bit to get your mind around. So you might check in with your team every month to discuss the previous months or previous 30 days or so, your fundraising. You might take a look and say, okay, cool, this is what we raised in the last month. And you might compare where you are now with where you need to be, where your goal is at the end of the year. In this case, the lagging indicator or the lagging indicator KPI that you're using is total funds raised in the last month. So it gets to the end of the month and you look back and you say, yep, we're on track, or no, we're not on track. Fast forward to the end of the year and you might do a full analysis of the total funds that you've raised for that entire year period. You might send it through to your board report, send through a fundraising report and be like, this is what we did we hit our target or not? And that looking back is a lagging indicator of your success because you're reviewing the past. Did you hit your total funds raised target or not? Whereas on the other end of the spectrum, the lagging indicators that would help you to achieve, the leading indicators that would have helped you achieve that lagging goal at the end of the year, the lagging goal of total funds raised, might have been something that you reviewed every week. So every Friday, you and your team meet up to review a few KPIs, a few leading indicators that you know will directly contribute to your organization's overall goals. So, for example, maybe you meet every Friday and you look at how many new subscribers that you have to your newsletter. Because, of course, there's a correlation between new people signing up for your newsletter and new potential donors. And new potential donors is a leading indicator that results in potentially more total funds raised. You can see how it kind of leads up into it. Another one might be a leading KPI that you look at might be how many of your donors are you able to convert from once-off donors, people who just donated once might donate towards the end of the year, but it's very random. How many of those you can convert to recurring donors? Because if you can increase the number of recurring donors that you have, it'll have a ripple effect onto the total funds raised. So in this example, you can see how those leading indicators that you're reviewing every week have a direct impact on the lagging indicators and what's going to ensure that you hit your targets. Improvements here have big results there. And that's what Tassie taught us. She was like, stop focusing on all your lagging indicators. Stop focusing on the target at the end of the year. That's miles away. You need to look at the leading indicators now, because they're going to be the ones that show you if you're on track, and they're going to be the ones that you have power over now. If you focus on them, and if you can get them sorted and get those goals hit, then the lagging indicators are just going to fall into place. They'll take care of themselves. And it was a really liberating feeling. I felt a lot of relief because, you don't have any control with a lagging indicator. It's just, did you hit it or not? And if the answer is no, it can be kind of disheartening. You're like, well, what do I do now? Whereas leading indicators, you can re-strategize and you can move and pivot based on all of your expertise. You have control over it. Now, if that passionate speech didn't convince you that you need KPIs, no worries, because I'm here to tell you what they're all about. I've got one more chance to try and get your buy-in for KPIs. They are important because they help you to keep track. They help us all to stay on track. And they give you and your team a goal that you can unite around. Everyone knows where we're heading and everyone's clear on our objectives, because getting rid of any kind of ambiguity on goals is going to be your first step to success. They help you to measure your effectiveness, your successes. You can say, brilliant. This campaign had a direct impact on this KPI. We've got to run this campaign again, or we've got to try that strategy, or this worked, this is working, keep that going. Things like that. It lets you see what's working. But more importantly, I think the thing that gets overlooked is it's a stop sign that says, hey, something's not working. We're not hitting this target. What can we do? And it gives everyone a space and a prompt to kind of brainstorm and re-strategize. So without this data, without that, the kind of points that we can refer to, we're all just leaves in the wind. So really important to kind of be using them. But Elsie, what if my organization doesn't accept donations? What if we're not fundraisers? You've been spending a lot of time talking about fundraising. What about me? Definitely understand that there are organizations who aren't numbers based, or you're not fundraising based. And I'll admit, those kind of organizations, that impact measurement that you'll need, the KPIs that you'll need to develop, will be a little bit trickier because they're more anecdotal and they're not as clean and cut and dry as fundraising, because they're not numbers and mathematics and things like that. It's completely dependent on your organization, what you're trying to do and what you're trying to achieve. So although I can't tell you what your own sort of KPIs should be if you're not fundraising based, I can help with determining what they should be once you've got an idea, because my wonderful colleague Maggie held a really incredible webinar recently for our adaptation series that was all about impact measurement in ways other than fundraising. So I'll send that webinar through, have a watch, you'll get an idea of all the different ways that you can measure your impact, all the non-traditional ways, I suppose, and then you'll be able to work backwards from there to develop your KPIs. So I've got you covered. For the purpose of this webinar, I'm going to use fundraising as an example, just because it is so cut and dry. So it's going to be a really easy kind of vessel that I'll use to explain all this information, but you can just cut and paste your own impact KPIs into it. How to track KPIs, my favorite part. So Tassie, the hero of KPIs, has a really incredible resource that I want to touch on today. And it's the same resource that we use in the customer care team. Pretty much every team in Keela has their own version of this resource. Let me bring it up. And it's called a scorecard. Don't be afraid of Excel. It's actually, once you get used to it, once you use it a couple of times, this is going to become your best friend if you so choose. So it's a spreadsheet that we have. We have it in Google Sheets, so it's online. So all of our team can access it and update it simultaneously at different times, and everyone can kind of download it from the cloud and stuff like that. But you can also have it in an Excel spreadsheet. But it's sort of a way for you to keep track of all these KPIs that I'm talking about and refer to it on a regular basis with multiple team members. So I'll be sure to send a copy through of this to you all after this webinar. It'll be a little bit different. I've kind of changed this just so it suits my webinar a little bit more. I'll send you Tassie's original one because it's the golden goose of scorecards. So over here on the left, we've got the kind of the KPIs that you can choose. So you can put all of the KPIs that you choose to track in here. And then we've just got a couple of columns here that indicate what it measures, how it's calculated, and why it matters, these 3 columns here. So once you've decided on your KPIs, pop them in column A, and then do make sure that you put as much detail as you like. You know, reword all of this. We've just got this as test data. You'll be the best choice of words and best choice of language for your own organization to populate all this with. But it's really important to have that so that everyone's clear about what you're trying to track. And if someone opens this document up that hasn't been trained on it, they should be able to understand what's going on based on these definitions. You'll certainly save yourself a lot of time if you've got people jumping in and jumping out of it. Really important to have clear kind of goals on that. Over here in the middle, you've got columns to set your benchmarks and your goals. We've populated some benchmarks in here as well, and you can see we've gotten it from, there's a little note here that tells you we got our benchmarks from these websites here. So you can grab them from there, or you can grab them from Keela if you want to get a little bit more specific, but we'll talk about that in a second. But you've also got a space to set your goals here. So the goals will be completely dependent on your organization. You can use the benchmarks as a guide. If you're not sure what your goals should be, you can use the benchmarks as a guide, maybe just put a little increase on there. You can refer to your board who can talk to you through about what the expectations are. Or if you have no idea where to start, which is where I was when we were in the customer care team and we were building out our scorecard, what we did, Laura and myself, we just measured 3 months of data and we said, okay, well, what's the score that we're getting 3 months? Let's just increase it. We've been getting 19%, 18%, 16%. Well, let's go to 20%. That'll be our starting goal. And then we'll review it in 3 months and we'll bring it up again. So it's sort of like a way for you to test out your own goals and then slowly increase them and bring them up over time. So give all that a go. We've got over here on the green side, you've got the spaces that you will be coming in to fill this information in. So this scorecard's set up to be monthly, but you can do it weekly, you can do it bi-weekly, you can add as many columns up here as you like. I definitely found that when we first started, we were reviewing everything monthly. When Laura decided that we should do things weekly, it was really kind of empowering because it meant that we weren't looking back. We were seeing trends happening week over week, which was really cool. And it let us make decisions. So every Friday, my team sits down and we look at some specific leading KPIs. We take a look at that and we say, okay, where are we falling off? How do we make sure that we hit our lagging indicators at the end of the month? So we meet every week, but also have a different set of KPIs to review on the month. So things like we get to Friday and we're getting a lot of questions about this specific thing. We haven't done enough knowledge base articles this week. Next week, we need to make sure we produce 3 knowledge base articles on this specific topic, things like that. I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's come back to the purple. So at the top, you'll see here a familiar heading, leading indicators. So this shows me that all of the KPIs below this are going to be leading, these ones here. So it's things like eBlast, open click rates, your average gift size, recurring donation growth rate, those kind of things. Because increasing the results of these leading indicators is going to have a direct positive impact on increasing my lagging indicators. These are the ones that I might review every week. Speaking of lagging indicators, they're here too. They're down the bottom. We've got a heading for them. So when you're filling out your own KPIs in the spreadsheet, make sure you think about what's lagging, what's leading, and make sure you split them up. And that's things like donor retention rate, total funds raised, all that kind of stuff. So I'll send through a version of this scorecard and you'll be able to update it. I'll send through Tassie's webinar, and she spends a lot of time talking about how to analyze this scorecard. So to come over here and be like, okay, this is increased. Why is this increased? Maybe that's because of this. She talks a lot about that. But today, now for the majority of the rest of the webinar, I want to talk about how you can use Keela to populate this. So let's jump back here. KPIs brought to you by Kit. So I just wanted to mention that we've actually partnered with Kit, which is an AI fundraising toolkit, AI-powered fundraising toolkit that specializes in analyzing data and providing predictions based on machine learning. So they have a million algorithms and all of this benchmark information about nonprofits, and they calculate it all and they make predictions. So that's what's powering our KPIs. We had a few beforehand, but we've recently released a bunch more based on sort of Tassie's guidance and Kit's powers. We'll be officially announcing that partnership in the upcoming weeks. They're actually going to be helping us improve our reporting tools. So stay tuned for that. But this is kind of a spoiler. You heard it here first. All right, enough theory. Let's get into it. Let's jump into Keela. Let's see what's going on. In your account, head over to fundraising, to the summary tab. And here you've got lots of different graphs and things to help you sort out what's going on in your account. You can set donation goals and revenue goals here. And that's what I would do to update the total funds raised section of my scorecard. So I jump in and straight away I know exactly how much I've raised this month just based on that. So you can copy and paste it and pop it into the scorecard straight from there. More importantly, if we scroll down, there's a whole section here just for KPIs. If I click Manage KPIs, there are 3 different types of KPIs available. We've got, and the reason why these are the KPIs that we've included, because they're the ones that we can provide you with the data that you've given us. So for the folks who are doing impact management, who aren't really focusing on e-blasts or not looking at fundraising or things like that, you'll need to find ways of analyzing that data. You can do it in Keela if you're logging that kind of stuff in maybe volunteer hours or custom fields. We just don't have a way of knowing what your KPIs are, so we can't automatically produce those. But there will be some in here that are handy, I think, for you in terms of the e-blast clicks and things like that. So back to it, we've got donors is number 1, and this looks at specific things relating to the people or companies at your organization. It's looking at things like contacts. Fundraising is more on the transaction side, so it's looking at the donations that you're receiving and analyzing that data. And then lastly, we've got eBlasts. And this is a really cool one, because although you can look at the open rates and the click rates of your individual eBlasts, this lets you see the general overview of how they're performing. So you can kind of zoom out and look at the open rates and click rates of all your email communications for the last 30 days. So it gives you kind of an overarching goal and combines that data, aggregates it for you. So I'm just going to add a couple. You can add as many as you like. You can add all of them if you want to your little KPIs dashboard, but I'm going to go with donor list size, contacts acquired monthly. Let's go donor acquisition rate's a good one. And I'm going to go donor retention, donor churn rate. Jump back up and I'll put some more fundraising in. Let's go average gift size and recurring donation growth rate. Let's say those are the ones that I want to start with. And there they are. They get added automatically to your little KPIs dashboard, and all of them keep themselves up to date dynamically, automatically. One thing to note is it does take a couple of days for new data to show up. That's just because there is a heck of a lot of computation that's happening in the background to calculate all of these figures and keep them up to date. So if you add 1,000 donations and you don't see them affecting your data straight away, don't be alarmed. The computers are just thinking about it. Come back in a couple of days and they'll be updated. All right, back to it. So you'll have over here current, and this is your current score. And so it's looking at either the number, the dollar amount, or the percentage that you're at the moment. So that'll sort of keep itself up to date. We have benchmarks here, if you look here, wherever they're available. And these benchmarks are actually based on the on organizations within your impact area. So it's not only just non-profit benchmarks, it looks at your specific impact area or cause area and compares you with organizations in there. So if you're wanting to grab benchmarks for your spreadsheet, this might be the most sort of accurate way for you to pull it instead of just general non-profit industry standards, because it's comparing apples to apples. So if you're an animal shelter or working with kind of animals, things like that, that's your cause area, and your benchmark will be updated to reflect that specific cause area. So it can be a little bit more specific, which I think is really cool as well. Another cool thing that you can do is that you can, once you've determined what your KPIs are, your goals, you can actually add them in here. So you click on the 3 little vertical dots beside a KPI and click edit goal, and you'll be able to enter it in here. So let's say the benchmark is 8% for donor acquisition rate. I'm going to go ahead and make the goal 9%. And it'll appear in here as well. So anytime you jump in, you'll straight away know what your current score is, where you're heading, what your goal is, and what the benchmark is as well. My favorite thing about the KPIs on here, though, isn't even on this page. It's when you dive into them. So you'll see on every single KPI card that we have, there's a more button. And this is where you're going to get a real cool overview of what's happening. So when I click on that for average gift side, I come in and it gives me straight away the highlights up the top. We've got the current amount that I'm on. So I'm currently on $177 average gift side. It's beautiful. Last month I was on 155, and I've had a change of nearly 15%. So that's something I'd want to be highlighting to my board to say, look at this, look at what we're doing. 15%, are you serious? We're kicking goals here. And the benchmark, we're over double. Brilliant. In the middle, you'll have a graph that talks through your average gift size or the KPIs history over time. So as you can see, I've got data in here from 1996 from our test account. So it's kind of dragging that graph out. And if the same thing's happening to you, it's brilliant that you've got data that old, because the more data you have, the better. It's really easy to zoom in. So I'll just click on this here, click and drag my mouse to highlight a section of the graph, and I'll zoom in. And I can always reset that zoom if I want. So now I'm looking from April 2019 to April 2021. I'm going to zoom in even more. I'm going to go from January 1st to now. So now I'm getting an idea of this year. That's the way you can do it. So now I can see all the months this year of my average gift size. So this can be really handy for when you're starting out and you're building your scorecard. You'll be able to come in here and say, okay, well, what was it on March 1st? $298.15. So you would update your February scorecard with that information. Your February column, you'd say for the month of February, it got to 298.15, and then it jumped up, because of course it's measuring in the past. We're looking back. So that'll be really handy if you do want to get the scorecard going, you'll be able to fill in all the blanks using this graph. Down the bottom, we've got kind of everything you need to know about the KPI. So what it is, why it matters, and how you can use it. So you could use these definitions to update your scorecard if you're super keen, because I think these are written by Tassie, so they are the best of the best. If anybody knows about KPIs, it's Tassie. So things like why does it matter can be really handy, because it tells you why. It gives you the buy-in, you know what I mean? It tells you why it's important. But for me, my favorite part is how to use this KPI. So we've got little suggestions in here. So one of the suggestions we've got here is, look, look at segments of folks who donate under $100. There's a segment for it. You can take a look and see if you can increase that amount by $5 or $10, because that's going to increase your average gift size, which of course is going to lead on to your total funds raised increasing as well. So little suggestions like that can be found in here as well if you're not sure where to start. Okay, what's next? Well, so there are definitions and graphs, these things that I've just covered for all of them. So you can click on any of these more buttons and you might see different things depending on what the KPI is, but you can really use it to learn more. If you're not sure about KPIs, add them all to your screen and click on them all to find out what each of them does and decide if that's something that's appropriate for your organization. Let's jump back to here. So now we've got an idea of where the KPIs are in Keela. Let's bring it back here. So let's say each month or each week, depending how keen you are, you and your team members sit down and you review this scorecard. You look at, say we're looking at June today. So someone or a couple of different people would jump in the morning of, they would copy and paste all of those KPIs from Keela and they would have it in a spreadsheet so that you could keep track of the trends and be able to analyze it. So maybe you gather around a table or you gather around a Zoom call and perhaps you split up the KPIs per department. So maybe we've got eBlast here. So perhaps you're a kind of marketer or you're a event coordinator, your communications expert, whoever's sending out eBlasts and working on that could talk about these three metrics: the open rate, the click rate, and the donor conversion rate from those eBlasts. Did the stats increase? Did they try something new that resulted in an increase? Did something not work? Did it drop down? Did they try something out and it just didn't hit the mark? You give everyone a space through these KPIs so that they can chat about their own story and they can tell you sort of what's going on and start to find patterns and trends within this data. Another example, if we move down, maybe your fundraising coordinator wants to talk about donor acquisition rate and average gift size. Did they run into any specific did they run any specific campaigns that have increased? Did they notice anything strange happening with the number of new donations that were coming in that have brought down the average gift size? What's going on? And if something's not working, if they're not hitting their target, it opens up the floor for everyone to start brainstorming. So you can all be like, well, average gift size, maybe we can try and increase that. Maybe we can run a campaign that focuses on $200 donations to see what sticks or something like that. So you can really strategize. And I hear some of you saying, well, that's all good and well, Elsie, if you've got an event coordinator or if you've got a fundraising coordinator, but what if it's just me? I'm all of those things. I'm a volunteer working part-time. I'm a superhero, but I've got no one to talk to about this scorecard. I've got no one to strategize with. And absolutely no worries. We were in a similar space when we started out because in the customer care team, we'd never done anything like this before and we had no idea what we were doing, if I'm being honest. But the beautiful thing about KPIs is that everyone accepts them. So there's so many resources for them online. You can research what they are. You can research strategies about them, especially for nonprofits. If you Google how to increase average gift size nonprofit, you'll come back with hundreds of articles that you can read and try and find what works for you. And I'm definitely going to toot Keela's horn here. I think that our resources are really awesome when it comes to stuff like this. So we have our monthly webinars, the Keela webinars. We've got heaps of stuff on donor conversion rate and things like that. We've got blog posts. David's weekly newsletter often connects to articles about this kind of stuff. And we also have Keela U, which is a free donor stewardship fundraising, not university, I can't remember the acronym, but it's accredited course that you can take that has a whole thing on donor retention, a whole chapter on KPIs. So you could take that as well if you're looking for it. And I'll include some links to blog posts and things like that that I can come across in the email I'm sending today. But my point is that the truth is out there. You can find it. You just sometimes might be a little overwhelmed by what to look for, because if you type in nonprofit KPIs, you're going to get a bunch of results. And that's the beautiful thing about this scorecard is once you start tracking and where you're going and really investing the time into understanding your org, you're going to know what specific areas you need to work on. So you can look at this and be like, okay, we've got this is going great, but this one needs some work. I'm going to Google this one. I'm going to do some research on this one. Or I'm just going to go to Keela and search their blogs and their webinars for that specific thing to see what comes up. So at the very bottom, so you keep going and everyone's talking about your scorecard, everyone's getting to the results, and then you get to the bottom and, sorry, I shouldn't be zooming around so fast. You get to the bottom and it's time for the lagging indicators. And this is where everyone previously in the leading indicators had their own section, their own talking points. They knew exactly what their little area was responsible for and they talked about it. When it comes to lagging indicators, this is everybody's responsibility because all of their own personal KPIs or their own department's KPIs are going to lead into this part. We need to ensure everyone's hitting these. And I think total funds raised is going to be one that is really easy to see how they're all contributing to that. And you can use this scorecard when you're tracking total funds raised. If I go over to June, you can use it to be like, well, we're not on track or we are on track. Are we going to hit our total fundraising target by the end of the year? Or Keela has a way for you to track that without sort of doing the visuals in your Keela account as well. So I want to show you one more trick that we have up our sleeves for you when it comes to measuring this. And it's in our forecasting tab. So I'm on the summary tab at the moment. If I jump back into Keela, we're heading to the next tab over, the forecasting tab. So here you'll see a cumulative total of all the donations that you've received this year. But more importantly, Keela will provide a prediction for how many donations you're likely to receive based on your current donation trends, based on how things are happening at the moment. Now, full disclosure, this is a test account. So all of the data is completely crazy. Sometimes I just get the overwhelming need to know what it feels like to log a $1 million donation. Feels great, by the way. Would recommend if you're having a stressful day, just to feel powerful for a second. So a lot of this isn't real, but for the sake of today, just imagine it's valid data. So say I'm coming in here and I just want to zoom along here and I want to get to January 1st. So see how I've put my mouse kind of at a section along the timeline. By January 1st, 2020, I could have most likely, so highest chance, between 83,000 and 96,000. So that's pretty good based on how things are currently going. Less likely, 71,000. So that's pretty good, but if all the stars align and if everything keeps going and if all these spikes that I'm seeing continue to happen, it could potentially be 107,000. That would be great. But of course, so many factors contribute to that, right? You know, things change. You might get a bunch of donations one month and you've got no idea why it happened. And then that makes Keela think, oh, great, they're going to get these donations for the rest of the year. They're going to have a great time. So we've given you the ability to adjust the forecast based on these correction factors down here. So let's zoom down. You've got churn rate over here and just a general correction factor. So churn rate takes into account that, okay, Keela, calm down. Not everyone who donated is going to donate again. Of course, we have one-time donors. So what you can do is you can see how your donor churn rate, the rate at which donors drop off and discontinue contributing to your organization, you can see how that is going to affect this forecast. And of course, we're not going to make you calculate that yourselves. Nay. Jump back into the summary tab and we've got that KPI for you. So I'm pretty sure I added it in here. Let's take a look. Donor churn rate, there we are. Oh, wow, that's very depressing. Okay. So our test account's donor churn rate is 93%, which is wild. Luckily, it's not real and I need to let go of my emotional attachment to it, but that's pretty unfortunate. Benchmark is 62%. So if I were a valid organization, I would need to be figuring out now why that is so high. But again, suspend disbelief. 93% is my churn rate. So if I jump back into the forecasting, I'm going to drag this little thing across until I get to 93%. And let's have a look at how that has affected my forecasting. Ooh, Not well, folks, not well. If I hover over January 1st, I can see that it's dropped from 80,000 to between 43 and 49,000. So it's had a really high effect on that forecast. So that's how much that KPI is impacting the total funds raised. That leading KPI leads into lagging. So if you can increase or decrease that, if you can try and engage folks to reconnect, imagine what a difference it would make if I made it half of that, or if I made it the industry benchmark, which was 63% from memory. Then I'm going to hit my yearly goal. So if I could just focus on getting it down to the benchmark, I just might make it. So I think like that. And another example of what we've got, or actually, if I say it's back at 93%, let's keep it accurate. So let's say I'm like, okay, folks, this is our churn rate. This is our forecast. We're not going to hit our yearly goal. Our yearly goal is 60,000. It's this gray line up here. We're not even close. We are kind of close. But we need to brainstorm. We need to work together to figure out what we're going to do. And that's when Laura comes in. And Laura's like, hang on a second. It's only July. We've got our biggest fundraiser of the year coming up, Giving Tuesday. We always see an increase of donations by 15% at Giving Tuesday, or some other such rather wild number. And that's where the correction factor comes in. So you can adjust this percentage up or down to sort of take those things into account. You can see how little bits and pieces here affect it. So let's say I did know the exact number. If Laura was like, trust me, it's 15%, I could increase this by 15%, and then I could see how it affects this. So you can see here that I'm actually almost going to make it now. I'm most likely to get between 46,000 and 53,000. So I'm a lot closer to my goal. So you can use this to kind of understand how little changes here and there are going to have big consequences, how changes to your leading indicators are going to affect that lagging indicator, bring that graph up over time. Okay, so this scorecard here. It's brilliant because it lets you keep track of your KPIs, and you can use it as a discussion point. But another cool thing about it is that if you wanted to, you could provide it to your board, or you could at least use it to write your board report at the end of the year if you do something like that. But the last toot of Keela's horn will happen now. We actually have something that you can use instead of this that talks about a lot of those KPIs and is really beautiful. And I want to make sure everyone knows about it because it's completely free and it's in your account. Not many people are using it, as I would expect. I think everyone should be using it. So if I jump into the summary tab back here, there's a little fundraising report button here. And if you click on it, Keela is automatically going to produce a beautiful PDF fundraising report for you. And if I go up here, it'll be available in your notifications once it's ready. This is where anything you download or export, you get a notification up here. And it's pre-made and ready for you to send through to anybody you want to. At the moment, if I download it, it looks at the last 12 months from today's date. So June 24th. I just remembered it's my mum's birthday tomorrow. So don't let me forget to text her in Australia after this webinar. Any reminders in the chat would be welcome. June 24th. So we're looking at all the data 12 months from then. But in the upcoming months, we'll be introducing the ability for you to pick and choose dates. So you'll actually be able to produce reports like this for the last couple of years as well. You can have one kind of for everything that you can keep, and it's completely free. And look at it, it's gorgeous. You've got all these really cool KPIs being looked at. There's beautiful graphs in there that I really like, colors, it's gorgeous. You should kind of try and get one for every year once we release that ability, and you'll have it forever. You know what I mean? It's pretty cool. Okay, that's it. No more tooting of Keela's horns. Let's go back to where we're at. So in summary, we've looked at a lot of stuff today. KPIs help you measure your organization's success, but also learning opportunities. So it measures, it points out, it's a big shining alarm saying, hey, this needs some work. Please put some time aside to strategize about this. And most importantly, it predicts where you're headed. It lets you know, hey, at the end of the year, when everyone sits down and says, did we achieve what we wanted to this year? And you're going to have no surprises because those KPIs are going to show you towards the end of the year if that's where you're heading. Keela calculates a bunch of KPIs automatically in your account, so you should definitely know that after today's webinar, and also the importance of reviewing them regularly. So pick some KPIs to review once a week, pick some KPIs to review once a month if you like, but just make sure you're keeping it consistent, because otherwise you might miss the patterns or you might miss the alarm bells that you need to re-strategize. I'll be sending out the recording of this webinar, the slide deck, a link to Tassie's scorecard, a link to her webinar, a link to Maggie's webinar, and a bunch of different articles that I can come up with. If I'm super keen and I can get it all together, you'll probably get it this afternoon, but it might be before the end of the week, depending on what I need to rustle up. But that's it. Do I have any questions? I feel like I did a lot of talking. You might not have, I might have startled you all out of questions, but does anyone have anything that they need would like me to show, or anything that they'd like me to talk through? Maybe not. That's got to be a first. So surely I should get some kind of prize if I don't have any questions. That usually means that I've covered everything, or potentially that I talked too much and everyone's tired. I covered it all. Oh, brilliant.